Good. Computer says ping ping, so that means that it's time to actually get started. So welcome everybody. This is SharePoint Patterns and Practices, a special interest group around the SharePoint framework and JavaScript development. And this is the November 9th. Is today correct? The day is correct. Yes, cool. Edition. So we'll probably get a lot of people joining slightly late. That typically happens on this call. Everything is obviously getting recorded like in the past as well. So you can go back if you can't see the whole thing, can't see all of the demos which we do today. You can always go back on our YouTube channel and have a look on the recording afterwards as well. The recording will be available within the 24 hours. Thank you, Giuliano, on the feedback. Yes, our marketing director for SharePoint Framework created a new template for us, which is one of the hats I'm always putting on my head. So I love spending some time on PowerPoints when I need to relax, which sounds weird, but it's a change from writing code and designing stuff. So we do have a cool. And please remember to mute yourself for now, and we can open up stuff for discussion when we go to the Q&A section. But let me go through some stuff first, and then we do have 2 demos coming up today. So let me click on that one and making my clicker to actually properly work. So there we go. So quickly explaining what is the special interest group all about. So SharePoint Framework Special Interest Group is a bi-weekly meeting where we concentrate on what's latest and greatest around the SharePoint Framework from engineering perspective. So what are we building, what's happening, what's coming. Potentially we can do demos of preview capabilities which might be coming a few weeks back, or actually a month ago we already showed the upcoming ALM APIs as an example and how they work. You can go and have a look on that recording in the past if you're interested. We also go through what has happening in the PnP.js core side. PnP.js core usage is growing quite rapidly, so people clearly see that PnP.js core library as a way to learn JavaScript development in the context of SharePoint. If you're super familiar of REST APIs and you don't care about that fluent way of doing development, all good. That's absolutely a wise choice as well. But for those who are moving from a C# and a more, let's say, classic SharePoint development developers, PnP.js core is helping them to move on this side. Now, AKMS SPPNP community is a one location, and that's in the tech community side where you can go and ask questions on things, and that's relatively active, and you can always CC us on the discussion if there's a question which you need to answer. AKMS SP Dev Docs is the docs.microsoft.com location where we have plenty of documentation around SharePoint Framework and all of the other SharePoint development documentation, and I'll come back on that one slightly later. By the way, if somebody's wondering, that is not official SharePoint Framework logo, which you can see among the TypeScript and Node. That's something which I drew already a year ago, just out of fun. Now, moving on things. So we get to the interesting part. So some agenda topics for the day. So the PnP.js core component, I do apologize. I haven't had a time personally to really jump into this one. And Patrick Rogers, who's leading that effort, is still on parental leave. And so we're not going to concentrate on that one right now. I do know that there's a highly active Gitter chat where we have active community members helping on the PnP.js core usage. And since that hasn't really demanded me to jump in or somebody else to jump in, we haven't actually done that. Patrick Rogers will be back by end of November, so he might be back within a few weeks. And let me there we go. Now we got extra people muted. Cool. So Patrick Rogers is back by end of November, and we'll get back on the PnP.js core messaging in this calls as well. Now on the SharePoint Framework side, that is a copy-paste issue, so that's on me. So obviously we'll cover SharePoint Framework on latest news. I'm going to talk about slightly again the roadmap. I do have a few additional slides, which I just drew 20 minutes before this call to explain some of the cool stuff which is coming out by end of this year. Then we have 3 demos. I'm going to quickly do a demo on the server.json. If we do have Chris Kent on the call. Chris reminded me on something. Yes, we do. Chris reminded me on his Twitter tweets on something which we haven't actually documented, and I do apologize on that. Thank you, Chris, for writing a blog post on that one. So I recorded a small video on that one, and I'm going to show that one today as well. So what does it actually mean? Using the server.json to help the SharePoint Framework extension debugging. Then we have a demo for Giuliano and also Velin. Velin is joining slightly late today, so Velin is going to be the last one actually doing the demo, unless, no, he's not yet on the call. So he had something coming up pretty late, so, but he will be joining on time. Cool. So let's actually go through, before we go to the SharePoint Framework side, just quickly pinpointing, if you're interested on helping and teaching the community as well, there's multiple options around participating on this community. And let me mute again some people here. So you can always volunteer to do a demo on SharePoint Framework solution in these calls. So if you're interested, you can ping us in a GitHub. If you contribute a sample, you can always indicate that, hey, what if I would be showing this in the future? You can absolutely be active. Every now and then, it's a matter of us in our side doing always the request, and every now and then we way too late come up with a, hey, we don't have a proper community demo for next week, need to come up with something, and then it's going to be rushed. So if you have a great sample, if you're planning to contribute something, or if you have contributed something, feel free to suggest, hey, what if I would actually do a demo on this one? Absolutely good thing. Contribute on a GitHub, so if you can find an issue, do a pull request or submit an issue, contribute us, demo SPFx usage in a project, absolutely fine as well. And in general, if you don't have anything else to contribute back, provide feedback. If there's something which isn't right, something is wrong, why isn't Microsoft doing blah, blah, blah? Give us feedback. We actually want to help you. So there's multiple things, well, we know that we need to improve, but obviously your feedback is also giving us the indication where we will set our resources, and the demand and how many people are asking certain things, that is one driver for our prioritization. So please do give us feedback. So SharePoint Framework. So let's talk about the latest changes on this one and latest development on this one. So one thing what I wanted to quickly point on this one, and I'll show you this one in a demo as well, around the server.json as a first step before we go there. We have now done a relatively big restructuring on the docs.microsoft.com/SharePoint/dev underneath the SharePoint Framework side. Our structure in the navigation got slightly confusing, and we've done quite a lot of work based on the click tracking, so to make it more suitable. But please do give us feedback on that one, and I'll show you this one in practice as well. What we have also done related on the documentation is that we've taken all of the existing so-called, in quotes, classic SharePoint PMP documentation and guidance, which was in MSDN, and that's now merged to the docs.microsoft.com as well. So all of the active SharePoint development documentation is in the docs.microsoft.com, and that's a good thing. We do know that there's a lot of pages which still needs polishing and updates and all of that, and we'll work on them as we move along in this journey. So please, I do apologize that I know that there's some pages which are not quite up to date, but we do not have an infinite resources as well. The 24/7 is a massive challenge, at least for me. Now, let's actually jumping right on the demos. Before I will do actually live some discussion around the roadmap on the SharePoint Framework. But this is something what I recorded earlier today as a PMP short video. So I wanted to kind of pinpoint this one and show this one in this call as well, because I had everything basically ready to go and up and running in my machine. So let me actually show and share my screen, and we can actually have a look on what's happening. So somebody needs to tell me whenever the screen sharing is completed, and it is that screen. Oh, AC, is good to have you on this call. So, and please mute yourself. Please remember to mute yourself, because otherwise our recordings are Good, thank you, Ryan. So one thing before we go to the actual launch.json demo and talk about that one, and more than interested on getting a feedback on that one as well, I wanted to quickly pinpoint the documentation side of the thing. So if you go docs.microsoft.com/SharePoint.dev, you land to the new SharePoint landing page. The MSDN is gone. If you haven't heard about that one, well, it will be gone. And everything is moving to the docs.microsoft.com. So like Azure has done years ago, and we're moving there. Everybody else is moving there as well. In here, we did a relatively big shuffle on the documentation related on SharePoint Framework, and we're more than interested on your feedback around the shuffle, but the whole point of this one was that we would have more practical approach on how do I get started, what does it mean, where's the information, and the left side structure on the navigation would be slightly smaller, so it's not bending too big, so it was almost unreadable before this shuffle. So what we did in our side was that we did quite a lot of analyzing. I can quickly show you this. This is super cool stuff which we have here. This is an analysis on the live results on the click-throughs, what's actually happening within the site, which we're analyzing, and this is the ruling and the logistics, how we came up with a new structure based on the left navigation. Super cool tool, by the way, but unfortunately internal, the statistics and everything else, so I can't share that and to be available. But what's kind of interesting here is that one of the main topics, we're going to talk about this one today, one of the, no doubt, the number one thing where people land right after the overview on SharePoint Framework is roadmap. And that's actually kind of interesting, because then the question is, what are people looking for? Is something missing? Is something lacking? What do you want and assume that would be mentioned in a roadmap? So is something, why are you going to go there? And because that implies that something is missing from a SharePoint framework. And if something is missing, please let us know. We're highly interested on any of the gaps. I've done quite a lot of updates here as well at some point, so this should be quite up to date on the status where we are. Now, let me go back on the launch.json demo and on that discussion. So, like mentioned, thank you, Chris Kent, for reminding on getting this covered as well. You had a good blog post on explaining what's actually happening, but I wanted to actually do a quick video on this one. So let me open up the example case, and let me open up this one and explain what I will looking. So this is a list view commandlet solution which have not been modified pretty much at all. Well, there's two modifications what I've done. I'm going to explain that in a second. But this is the default scaffold project, which is outputting from the Yeoman templates whenever we've chosen to create a list view commandlet. And by default, in our old guidance and in our old, let's say, ways of how do we get started on the extension development, we actually told you that you should do gulp serve, and that's no browser, which would then start serving this from a local host. And I'm quickly double checking that I don't have it running anywhere else, which is the case. Cool. And then we said within our guidance, especially in the dev review guidance. And by the way, blue icon is back. Yes, I got an update today. Yeah, I was super happy on that one as well. So, and then we said that if you write stuff in the extension side, you'd go to the site, you go to the live SharePoint site, and then you need to come up with this debugging URL. So in the list view command set case, this is the default debugging URL, and I already updated that ID to match my manifest ID. So it should be actually working. If I put it in here, press enter, it will ask me that do I load the debugging script, and if I click yes, we can actually see that the command 2 is now shown there, and that's essentially what's available. Now, and if I select 1, we can see the command 1 and 2 here, and there's no selections in here. Now, what has changed after the dev preview, this was actually in the GA version of the SharePoint Framework extension, but we failed on updating our messaging, and I do apologize on that. That is technically on my responsibility, so my fault, me to blame. Is that we didn't actually explain that we did some work on making this easier and much more nicer. So in the config file, we actually, whenever you create a SharePoint Framework extension, we actually create you this file, and we get here default server configurations. And in here, we get you a page URL. In my case, I've already updated this to match to the URL where I actually want to do the debugging of this live list view comment set. What we also give you is by automatically getting the manifest ID correct, so you don't have to update that. So everything is by default configured for you. And because this is a list view comment set, it has the location entry, and I can then update that to be command bar or context menu, or if I do that one, it's actually in the command bar and in the context menu. And then the property values, so you're able to configure the property values here as well. The key point here is that I can actually create multiple different configurations. So I can actually create then an alternative configuration, and I can test how my list, extension works without updating those query parameters in the browser window. And how does this work? Well, now that everything has been updated properly, I can just do call observe. And what's going to happen in the Windows especially, this slightly depends again on your operating system. In Windows, it's going to take the last browser window which was active, and it's going to open up a tab on that one. In my case, I'm using, for example, Google Profiles, because I'm using so many tenants, so I always activate the right tab and then run that, so I will get stuff running in here. And as you can see, my query parameter is automatically updated. I have my buttons available, and I can much more easily now test the behavior of the functionality. Now, in this case, we started the default configuration. If I actually want to start that alternative configuration, we can do observe -config equals, and what was the configuration name? Pasting that one, and that's going to then essentially execute this particular setting here, which could be located in a different URL. It could have different configurations and different property setup, and now it's getting loaded. If I click that one, we can see that it's actually giving the alternative configuration. So this definitely will help everybody who's looking in the building SharePoint Framework extensions, which were, well, they're GA'd in Ignite, and this is part of the GA functionality. Thank you, Rolf. I was expecting somebody to be relatively happy on this one. So super, it's not a massive, like, wow, mind-blowing. We're still testing against the live site, which some people don't find that useful. They would like to use a local workbench. We might get there at some point. That is pretty hard. There's quite a lot of votes on that user voice entry, so we might get there at some point. But we'll see when that might happen. This way, you don't have to worry about the query parameters, because we're taking all of that, taking care of that for you automatically. And then obviously, if I, where's my, let's actually stop that one. If we have a look on the other options, so there's a field extension as an example. So this is a field extension. The field extension has a slightly different server configuration options. And in this case, as an example, you are defining what field will associate that manifest, and then you're in the same way you can actually properties. Now, and this way you can much more easily do live testing on a live site as well. If you're wondering, by the way, what's going to happen if I have multiple extensions and multiple things, that's actually visible. Give me a second in here. What's going to happen is that every single time you add a new extension or even a web part on the project, we add you an alternative entry. So in this case, there's one application customizer, there's a second one which has been added, and then we added a third application customizer, and then there's a field customizer, and so on. And then you basically use the config dash to decide what is the extension, what are you actually using. Good. And any chance we can get rid of the default option? The present is basically kills the use of local workbench without work manually removing the, yes, good feedback. It might be slightly challenging, especially if you start by creating a web part and then adding extensions, then it gets slightly complicated to actually do the selection of the right configuration. Now, there is a related on this one, like 20 minutes ago or 30 minutes ago, if you're interested, we did release a YouTube video on this one as well. And obviously this recording is available within 24 hours. Chris has a blog post which is also explaining some of the texts and links on this one, but Chris can pinpoint that in. Cool. Let's get back on the slides. I have a few slides, and then we have 2 of the community demos coming up as well. But what I wanted to do quickly is talk about a few upcoming things, because, well, technically I was planning to do this one as well, but within the last hour before this call, I joined AC's Andrew Connell's office hours related on his training material, because I was curious on the questions what people are asking. And funny enough, people were asking questions around the topics which I was planning to cover in this call as well. So AZ, I'm not answering those questions directly, but I want to cover some of that stuff based on the input what people were having. And if somebody's wondering, yes, we have a long positive history together with AZ, so we are sharing a lot of the stuff together on these things. Yes. So flipping back on the slides, unfortunately Skype is apparently nowadays missing the location where I was, and let me actually move on to the right slide. So that was quick demo around the launch JSON usage on the Sharepoint Framework extensions, and there is a PMP short video now available in the YouTube on this one. I think it's 14 minutes if I'm not mistaken. Now there's a few things what I wanted to actually cover from here. So updated situation on a roadmap. So one thing has been changed from here, and the Office UI Fabric core support was released as part of the 1.3.4, and that the Office UI Fabric core support is really, it's a new package and a new way that you can actually take advantage of the Office UI Fabric core styles, even though you wouldn't be actually using a React. And this is due to the fact that Office UI Fabric has a slightly different way of versioning their stuff. So we need to do this kind of a middleman on the middle, so that your SharePoint Framework web parts can safely use the Office UI Fabric. It's not an optimal situation, but realities of life at least for now, so that support is available. But what's coming soon is quite cool stuff. So ALM APIs for scripted deployments on SharePoint Framework components. So essentially, we did a preview on this one on 19th of October in this call. I'm going to talk about that one in a second more detail. The second thing, what is super, super cool, and I don't think people actually understand how cool this is until I explain this on the slide, is the assets included in the deployment packages. And it's like, okay, yeah, what does it mean? I'll get to that one in a second. Site-specific app catalog to allow the scope deployments. Let's talk about that one as well. Site designs with an extensibility point. We showed that one in Ignite as well. And then more Microsoft Graph support. And these items, and this is kind of I'm hinting something on the order of these things as well. So the order should be pretty much aligned on the speed that they're coming out as well. So you will see more and more stuff coming out in matter of, how would I put it, days and weeks rather than months. And all of those things we promised to release by end of this year. So everything in coming soon section will be live within next, 1.5 months. So cool stuff which will help you to be more productive within the production as well. But what I wanted to do is go through 3 of them in a slightly detailed, and apparently I do have a animation here which I missed, but that's fine. ALM APIs. So what does it actually mean? So it means that we'll have a REST APIs and CSAM APIs. CSAM APIs are actually coming through the PMP CSAM core component, but we have a CSAM APIs as well for managed code to automate the needed operations around the SharePoint Framework solutions and add-ins as well. So you're able to add solutions and add-ins to the app catalog. You're able to trust them, and you're able to get them available to get deployed in the app catalog. Then you're able to install those to individual sites automatically, including the trust operation, so you don't need to actually do that. And then if the add-in / solution is on a site and you need to do an upgrade operation technically is only needed, for example, for SharePoint Framework solution if it contains feature framework elements, but that's a side discussion. But if you need to do an upgrade definition, an upgrade operation, you can do that using ALM APIs as well. So there's a REST API to make that happen. across all of your sites within your tenant automatically. And then if you need to uninstall add-ins from the sites, you can also do that using the ALM APIs. The ALM APIs do work with an app-only token, and also if you are using add-ins and your add-ins have this app installed, app uninstalled events, all of those events are probably getting fired. So we've gone through all of the testing with this one and it looks super positive. It's just a matter of us actually shipping this live for you guys. So it's kind of coming relatively soon. The second thing, so for me, this is absolutely super mind-blowing. Finally, we're getting this out. To be honest, as a Microsoft employee, I do apologize. We should have shipped this for add-ins already, 2 and 3 years ago, but better late than never. And now it's coming out finally. Now, the other stuff which is coming out, which I try to explain, well, quickly just explaining, in the slide perspective, I quickly created some new slides. I need to still work on this, is the site-specific app catalog, which essentially means that you're able to then deploy or get add-ins or SharePoint Framework solutions available in a subset of sites or only in a specific site collection. And that's super cool as well, because quite often you might have a scenario where within your global intranet site collection, you want to have a different set of web parts available rather than in collaboration site collections. So your tenant admin can configure those sites where the site collection app catalog can be used. So tenant admin still has the power because we need to have the centralized control. But after the tenant admin has given permissions for site collections or specific site collections to have the app catalog, those can be created or they will be created based on the PowerShell commandlets, what the tenant administrator is using. And then at that point, the site collections will have their own app catalog, and then you're able to deploy add-ins and SharePoint Framework solutions only to be available for end users within that site collection. And isn't that cool, right? Somebody, yay! Ooh. Okay, that's super cool. Nobody's writing anything in our window. Come on, people. Yay, whippy. There we go. Thank you. Cool. So that's coming quite soon as well. And it's we're working on final pieces of documentation, PowerShell, and everything else is under testing as well. So super cool stuff. Good. And then the final thing, which is super cool, I'm trying to explain this. I don't have a proper animations clearly in place, but I'm trying to explain this from here without the animations. So I do apologize I need to still polish some of the slides. Now, this is, I would say, the most groundbreaking thing after Ignite or after SharePoint Framework extensions. So how did we ship our SharePoint Framework solutions to production usage in the past or right now? Well, we package them, we run the package solution, we get the JavaScript files and JSON files and all of that stuff to a temp folder or the solutions temp folder. Sorry, SharePoint temp folder, and then we need to host those things somewhere. So somebody needs to manually go and get the files and JavaScript files and host them, for example, from Office 365 Public CDN or from Azure CDN. So somebody needs to do the additional thing. Now, as part of the upcoming versions, we will actually flip this completely, and this is super cool. You are still able to do that. You're still able to do that if you want to do that. But what we will do by default is that we'll package all of the JavaScript files and assets, including in that solution, inside of the SPPKG file. So whenever you deploy the solution package to app catalog and you activate the solution to be available, we then have a two choice. If your Office 365 public CDN is enabled, we'll automatically host those assets through Office 365 CDN. If you don't like Office 365 CDN and you just want to have completely private, you want to have that functionality not enabled due to reasons or another, we'll actually host those JavaScript files automatically for you from the tenant app catalog site collection. So you don't have to worry about shipping JavaScript files to a CDN. If you don't want to do that, you can still do that if you choose to do so. So if you, for example, if you're thinking that, well, I don't trust Microsoft ways of optimizing Office 365 Public CDN, or you don't want to use Office 365 Public CDN, you want to use Azure CDN, you can still do so. But by default, we'll actually get you this. And we'll do updating of the URLs, everything else automatically. So you as a developer, you do not need to worry about what is my CDN URL and how do I make this happen. You essentially follow the default path and then you deploy, and if the Office 365 CDN is enabled, we'll update the URLs and everything is being served from Office 365 CDN, and if it's not enabled, we'll serve it underneath the tenant app catalog. Super cool. No more CDN pain, exactly. And like mentioned, if you want to go there, if you want to opt to do, let's say, no, I know how to optimize Azure CDN, or I'm using Amazon CDN, it's much better. Yep, you can still do that, absolutely. It's just a matter of a choice how you package your things. So big time saver and massive deal. Coming quite soon, and I do know that we've been kind of failed to explain this feature. We announced this actually, my manager, my boss, Dan Kogan, announced this in Ignite. Probably wasn't able to explain how big of a deal this is. This is super cool. Cool, but that's it for the roadmap. And if there was any questions during that one, I'll need to follow up on the Iron window on those questions, because I was walking around in a room with my clicker and I wasn't paying too much of attention what's happening in the Iron window, except that people seem to be happy. So let's start with Giuliano around the instance. It should be instant notification to web parts and extensions. We have webhook demo. And Giuliano is going to take 15 minutes roughly, and then there's a 15 minutes for Velin as well. And I'll upgrade Velin as a presenter if he has already approved or joined the call. But Giuliano, are we good to go? He is sharing and unmuting, yes.
Thanks, Vesa. Let me know when you see my screen.
Interesting. So now I'm seeing the slides. I don't know if now it's loading. Got it. So now we can see now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Vesa. Quick presentation about myself. My name is Giuliano De Luca. Currently, I'm working as a software engineer for Hugo Boss in the headquarters, which is based in Germany. I have also a blog where I post several articles about Office 365 and SharePoint more in general. If you want to contact me, or if you want to send me some feedback or suggestion, feel free to use Twitter. And there is also my GitHub account where you can find, I hope, useful stuff around Office 365. Okay, move forward with the agenda. What is the main concept here? I want to show you how you can easily build notification systems across webhooks. We will take a look also about the solution architecture behind, and also about the Node.js app that works as a webhooks broadcaster. And finally, we will see the demo in action. The first one is a web part, real-time newsfeed, and the second one is a toast notification application customizer. So move forward, and here, as you can see, we have the solution architecture. Firstly, we have the SharePoint Online, and in my case, events list. And another important pillar is the Node.js web app that works as a Socket.io server. And after that, you have performed the subscription of webhooks. Every list changes will trigger an HTTP post towards the subscriber. If you don't know, Socket.io is a really powerful JavaScript library that allow to to establish a communication between a server and a client. If you are more familiar with C#, you can obviously use Signal R. Also, from the client side, then Sharepoint Framework, we have a dependency, and this is a Socket.io client in order to establish the communication with the server. Both the web part and the application customizer make use of the Get Changes API. This is a really important and focal point because I want to grab only the information and the content that is really new and fresh for the user, and only to put the focus on the change token. I'd like to give you a quick explanation. The change token, it's important in order to define that I want to retrieve the content that it's stored in the SharePoint list from a specific start date. How is composed this change token? We have the first number that identify the version, and the second is the scope. 3 means that it's a SharePoint list, and here we have a dynamic parameter that came across the SharePoint webhooks and identify the GUID of the list. And another important point is that we have to convert the date, the normal date, in the UTC ticks format. And the last one is by default -1. You can leave it as is. Also, here is important because I'm going to specify that I want to get only new item added into the list. Okay, move forward, and I'm gonna show you immediately the webhooks broadcaster. This is the index page. So basically, I'm showing here the last 6 webhooks received. Now I connect to my demo site collection in order to display the web part in action. Okay, let me open the list events. I'm gonna split in 2 tabs. Okay. SPFx webhooks real-time web part. Here I am. Now I'm adding a new item into the list. Insert a simple URL. And as you can see, we have the application customizer in action, and also the web part notify me that we have a new item. We have a really good performance. It's really, we can define it really in real time. And if I click on the button, I can display the new item. Regarding the application customizer, of course, if I open another modern view page, I will see the toast notification. Yeah, got it. Okay, move forward with the code. Deep dive. Okay, this is the Webhooks broadcaster, and I used the Express as a web framework, and some other dependencies like body parser and socket.io, obviously, and moment. Okay, the post method root, it's really important because exactly here I'm going to validating the webhooks subscription, and in the else basically I'll emit the webhooks that I receive from SharePoint. I'll emit it with socket.io server, and specifying the list changes event, and as is the JSON that came across from SharePoint. Here I'm logging also this operation to keep track in a txt file. So here, obviously, you can insert your data source and what you prefer. Yeah, I want to show you also regarding the web part that you have the possibility to specify the URL. Oh. Yeah, here, this is my socket.io server, the Node.js app, and this is a dynamic value that you can define. Walk through about also the real-time web part. As I announced, I used the get changes API in order to retrieve fresh content for the user, and when I have new items, basically I'll use PMP JS core to get this element from the list. We have exactly the same mechanism and exactly the same logic on the application customizer. Here there is also a useful function in order to convert the data in the UTC ticks. Here you can find also, I think, useful stuff. We have two PowerShell scripts. You have to specify your parameter for your site collection, and basically you can run these two scripts in order to automate the bundle upload on Office 365 CDN, and the same for the SPFx. You can use the script to automate also the uploading of the SPFx and the deploy. I will update in the future these two scripts with new and fresh ALM APIs. Yeah, I want to show you also the application customizer, but yeah, we have exactly the same mechanism. When I have a new notification, basically I use a top placeholder in order to display the div as a toast notification. And also here we have in the connect socket method, we have the connection to the socket.io server, and when the server push some content, this method will be triggered, and here basically will start the logic in order to grab the the new item and to show the notification. Flip on the slide, flip back, and as a final consideration, I can say that this is an interesting scenario where the communication is really important on a site, and we have a really good performance as you have seen. Yeah, webhooks, it's a really amazing mechanism, and yeah, at the end we have a web request reduced and under control. So from my side, I think that's all, and sorry for my Italian English.
Oh, all good, all good. I'm providing always Finglish and all good with that. So thank you, Giuliano, on this one. Really great. And the scenario itself, I think that the whole socket.io communication, we've seen this from Frank Cornu at some point as well.
Yeah,
and it's exactly. A really, really great way of communicating. And also it doesn't have to be based on the webhooks. It might be, let's say, typical classic old scenarios would be something like we want to have alerts immediately available in the front page of intranet. We can easily do that by using this kind of mechanism. So there's kind of multiple scenarios. So this one is a great end-to-end scenario for creating an item. It will actually then pop up on the other side, but it has small, great technical pieces inside of it as well, which you can use as a, let's say, innovation for your sample and innovation for your solutions, whoever is watching. But thank you, Giuliano, on this one, and thank you, Velin, for joining. And thank you for actually starting the sharing already. So yep. You were being patient. Cool.
Yep. Can you hear me well?
All good, all good. Just take it away.
Okay. How do I remove that top bar here? Oh, good. I used to remove that previously. Never mind. Okay, hello, my name is Velin Georgiev. I'm a SharePoint developer. Today we're going to talk about application customizer, SharePoint Framework extension. Called React Mega Menu, and I'll go into the demo directly here. So it's not pretty, but the aim was a bit different. So if you can see that button here on the top left side, that will trigger my React Mega Menu, and if I hit it, you'll see that panel that pops from right to left, and it covers the whole screen, and you have some URLs here. We have URLs organized in categories here. So the top one is a category, and here we have all the URLs. So the aim of my mega menu was to try somehow fit as much URLs as I could. So, you know, the enterprise loves those big fat footers, fat headers, mega giga menus, and they want to put as much URLs as they can there. So I've tried to just put 100 plus URLs here, and you can even put as much as you can because it's a top to bottom hierarchy. It's mobile friendly as well. So if we open it into such a view, you'll see that we have all the URLs available as well. So we can close that panel from here. There is a close button here. So we are back to the modern library. That's the menu, and as I've said, should not be pretty. That was not my aim. For example, we don't see featured URLs here, but I just wanted to show you that we can fit as much URLs as we can here. Some theme tricks here. As you can see, my SharePoint site theme is purple or magenta. I don't know what that color is called, but we can see it from the background here or from the URLs. And if we trigger that menu, the categories has the same background and the URLs as well. If I go to a different site collection, that site collection has a blue theme applied here. And if we open the mega menu again, we see blue categories. So that trick was introduced by Stefan Bauer, and Alex Terentiev also talked about this, and I think it's in the official documents of the SharePoint framework now. I'll try to show you the tricks when we go into the code, where we store the items. If we go to site contents, we can see that we have a mega menu list here. So that thing is deployed along with the extension by just deploying a feature framework asset. And here we have the category organized in the list, and then we have the menu items, and then we have the URLs bound to those menu items. And the good part about this is that we can very easily customize it, and we can go even into a quick edit and say that that's supposed to be into the other category, and we can say in an Excel fashion, just put it into the other category. So my URL is into the other category now. So a SharePoint list controls the menu items, but that doesn't say that you should use it. You can implement something that pulls information from the taxonomy for the managed metadata store or whatever. So then what we have here also is that panel that comes from left to right, and that panel is the Fabric UI component. So if I go to the Fabric website, for some reason I cannot remove that, but there is the Fabric website, and I just copy pasted a sample from here. There is the panel. It's the very same panel that's used for web part properties, for example. So I'm using it, but just I'm just specifying that should be a full screen. That is the sample, the very same panel from the Fabric UI React components. That's on the demo. Let's go into the code and then see what's there. Let's start with the tricks and tips here. There is a very good post from Stefan Bauer, and as you can see my code, that's an extension. In the elements, we have a bunch of more elements that deploy a list instance, so I wanted to fully automate that, and the mega menu list is part of the package. Of course, you can remove those elements and install the list by yourself. Then here is a typical React template setup, where we have the application customizer, but the React components are under components. Also, we have tests, and these are my menu providers, where I have a fake provider that's just JSON data, so I can test it in local mode. And that is the SharePoint list provider. So on the styling, here we have just the styles class, and then this is just a copy-pasted thing from the Stefan Bauer blog. So you can define your primary theme here like that, and you can reuse it in your classes. So whatever is the primary theme of your site, the colors are applied, like colors or background colors as well. Very, very efficient trick, and then we can achieve much with that. So going into the components here, there is the application customizer, and we are loading a React component here, and we're grabbing the top placeholder so we can put our buttons and our application customizer in the top placeholder. A few more properties here that I'll go into details later. Here is the component. So the component has a lifecycle event, React lifecycle event that has component did mount, and when we load the application customizer, it fires a call against the SharePoint list, retrieves the data from the SharePoint list, and loads it into a React state here. That state refreshes the data accordingly. Then on the render method, we have a sample button, the one that you're seeing initially on the top left, and once you hit that button, there is that Fabric UI panel that renders the data that comes from the list. Two loops here. The first loop will iterate over the categories, and the second loop will iterate over the URLs within the categories. A fairly simple thing here. I wanted to keep it simple and not put more functionalities here. And on the providers, let me just show you the additional properties that I've specified here so we can talk a bit more. These are like features to the sample. The first feature would be enable session storage cache. Because if this is used from the enterprise and it's like your home intranet page and it's hit by 13 millions a week, SharePoint list might not be the optimal solution and scenario. In order for you to improve the page performance, you can store the mega menu for the session into your client, your browser session storage. So you just request that mega menu once per session, which might improve the overall page performance. How this is done, if we go to the SharePoint list providers, you can see that get all items method here, and it will try to retrieve from the session storage first. If no data there, it will try to retrieve from the SharePoint list and put that data into the session storage. Again, how we fetch from the SharePoint list, of course, we're using the SharePoint PnP JS core libraries, and we're just getting the results from the list here. That part is quite finished, and of course, again, the other feature is root web only. That mega menu can work in two modes, can be installed on every site and subsite, and every site and subsite can have a unique mega menu, but can be installed as a root. So you install it in the root site of the site collection, and all the subsites are retrieving data from the root web list only. So if you specify that here to be true, and then also additional step can be done here in the elements, you have to go to your list instance and say that's a root web only list, so it's not installed in the subsites. You can turn that mega menu into a site collection mega menu, so it's one mega menu for all the site collection. And what else is interesting about these? Of course, unit tests. As with every my sample, there is a good reference of unit tests here. So don't underestimate unit tests. Try to be a good citizens and at least build few unit tests to build regression-less systems. And this can be used as a reference for unit tests as well. I think I'm done with my demo.
Cool.
And thanks.
Yes, absolutely. Yep. Good stuff, Velin, and good clarification on things. And this is a great sample as well because it shows so many things. So there's the feature framework-based provisioning, which I know Velin likes as well. I used to teach that in the master certification training for SharePoint, which is slightly awkward. But historical SharePoint stuff. But these are good example of actually showing how to make those complex things happen. And the feature XML as an example, you have to use that if the persona who's using the web part doesn't have the permissions to create the lists, because in that case you can't write the code which is creating the list. So good scenario, good demo, good usage of Office UI Fabric as well. So good from that perspective. I'm going to flip back on the slides just to close up today as well. And the slides obviously are starting from oh, they didn't. Interesting. Now they jumped on the demo. So let me actually jump. They jumped on a different location. So quick points on the timing. So the next SharePoint Framework JavaScript special interest group meeting is in 2 weeks, so on November 23rd. The next special interest group meeting on PnP is on next Thursday. So technically we do have a SharePoint special interest group for developers on every single Thursday at the same time. Now, originally, the bi-weekly was around SharePoint Framework and JavaScript on one, and then the other one was more on the PnP JS Core and PnP Provision and PnP PowerShell. We're kind of rebranding the second one as being more general SharePoint Dev, which includes site designs, site scripts, theming, and all of this other stuff as well. So it's not just around the PnP component usage, but it's more around the, let's say, non-SharePoint Framework JavaScript stuff from a positioning perspective. I always try to push out the agenda during the daytime, so you will know 2 to 3 hours before what we will actually go through on those calls. I know that it would be nice if we would actually do that, let's say, on Monday or Tuesday when the meeting is on Thursday, but quite often we have no clue what we're going to cover on Thursday by end of Tuesday. So things are evolving so fast, and we're always trying to get you the latest and greatest what we can actually show. So there's always, it might be that we can show something which we were unaware we could show on Tuesday, and then we get that green light on that one on Thursday. So that's the reason why the agendas are coming quite late. Cool. Yes, sorry, Jim, 4 a.m. You are, where on earth are you located? No, 7 a.m. PST. How is it 4 a.m.? You're in Honolulu then. Okay, how are you? So that's okay. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But thank you everybody for joining on this one. We didn't explicitly have a time again on the Q&A stuff. Maybe we should actually start realigning this in a way that there's always the additional 10 minutes to go through on random questions, because we really want to make sure that if you have a question, you can join on this call, so you can have that question. I try to go through again on the IM window as much as possible and make going those through as you were asking the questions. If we missed something, I do apologize. But let's try to figure out how we want to do this in the future. And again, if you're volunteering for the demos, we do have actually monthly community call coming up on next Tuesday as well. So if you have contributed on last month on something which we haven't yet done a live demo, please do ping me on, for example, in a GitHub, and we can set you up for a quick demo as well. But thank you everybody for joining. The video recording will be available within the YouTube channel within 24 hours. So you'll see that tomorrow latest on there if there's something interesting which went through. Thank you everybody, and keep the feedback coming. We really want to help you to be successful with this one. So if something isn't working right, let us know. Thank you. Bye-bye.